Just like that, it is the final week of the Every Bit Counts challenge. Every year, August just goes so much faster when you're doing this challenge, and your focus is really on get something done every day. Just something. It doesn't matter big or small. It does not matter. I want to thank Jessica at Three Rivers Homestead for spearheading this every single year. She does an amazing job, and she is so inspirational herself, and she inspires me to do this every year, and you guys keep me going. So welcome to Grow and Preserve. I'm Carter, and I am so glad you are here today. We're going to jump right into week 5. It was a very busy week for me because of my posting schedule, which will be on Saturday, August 31st. I did have to preload some of my days. I had to pack some projects in. So you'll see that, but let's jump into week 5 right now. This was a very busy week, so let's get started. You might remember from a couple of weeks ago, I made what I called a peach sauce, and I thought it would be a fun thing to give as a Christmas gift to friends and neighbors to use like on top of ice cream or yogurt or pancakes or oatmeal or in a sparkling drink of some variety or perhaps in kombucha. So I thought a fun little gift would be to give each person 3 of these, 3 brightly colored little sauces, fruit sauces. So I did the peach. This time I'm going to do the cherry and pomegranate. And I have a third one in mind, but I haven't made that one yet. So in order to make this, I'm going to follow a cherry jam recipe out of Pomona's pectin, but I'm not going to use the pectin and the calcium water. I just want to follow the recipe so that I keep my ratios right for the pH. So I'm also going to break out here a new little food mill that I bought about a week or 2 ago, I guess. So it ended up working terrific for this, and you'll see I use it later in this week's episode as well. So I'm going to get these cherries blended up. And then I'm going to add the lemon juice that's called for in the recipe. I'm going to add the pomegranate juice. It calls for cherry juice, but I'm going to use pomegranate juice. So like I did with the little peach sauce, I'm going to use these little 4-ounce jars that I just think is the perfect presentation for this gift. So that is 2/3 of my holiday gifts done this year. So 1 more to go. Hopefully I'll get that done in September. And then I don't have to scramble come November. All right, this next day, I'm going to spend most of the day prepping for the next couple of days worth of projects. So I have 3 projects coming up. I end up with another surprise project, but 3 projects coming up in the next 2 days, all 3 of which require boatloads of onions. And you know how much I love processing onions. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of them done at once. This takes care of a lot of my onions, plus a couple of store-bought larger onions that I had sitting around. So I'm going to get all of these processed, and then I will measure them out for each specific recipe, mark them in a baggie, stick them in the fridge, and I do not have to either deal with all of the onion tears or the mess from peeling them or just the time it takes to do this. And so it allows me a lot more flexibility if I want to do more than 1 project in a day, sometimes more than 2 projects in a day. It is so much easier to go ahead and get all the prep done ahead of time. So I'm going to do the onions today. I'm also going to do some ginger. 2 of the 3 recipes require a good bit of ginger. And then, as you know from a couple of weeks ago, although I didn't show it, I told you about it, but I didn't show it, I did process a bunch of garlic for the freezer a couple of weeks ago. So I already have that part done, and I am determined I need to get the same thing done with ginger. So I'm going to have a little bit left over, and I'll stick that in the freezer. But I would really like to have some, hunks of frozen shredded ginger in the freezer as well. So maybe that's another project for this fall. So little did I know, as I'm doing these onions and ginger, after this I was going to Costco and I was going to find yet another project for myself to do tomorrow. So we'll get started with that one in a sec. All right, so today my Costco here in Tennessee had fresh figs. I have been looking for them at this Costco for the past 3 years. We always had them in Atlanta, but you know, they just told me they didn't carry them here because we were a flyover state, which made no sense to me. That doesn't mean you don't eat fresh figs. Anyway, I walked in today or yesterday and I found them. So here I am adding to my list of what I'm going to do today. So I'm going to make balsamic fig jam, and I'm going to do a batch and a half. I think is what I had enough figs to do. I have one girlfriend who just loves fig jam, so you'll see I'm going to make a few larger jars for her, and then I'm going to make several others just to take as gifts over the holidays as we go to, you know, Christmas parties and that kind of stuff. So this was fun. I enjoyed doing this. I've wanted to do it for so long. So as you know, if you've done a lot of canning with pectin, when you multiply up a recipe that involves pectin, it doesn't always go exactly as planned. But thankfully this one went perfectly and everything set really well, had a nice set to it, not too firm. I didn't want it too firm for a fig jam and not too soft. So I just thought it was terrific. So with a pomatus pectin recipe, normally do 4 cups of fruit. So because I'm doing 1.5 times the recipe, I'm going for 6 cups of the pureed fruit. So you can see I have a little bit extra. I'm going to skim that off, and I actually end up making that at the end separately as a little freezer jam. And I turned it into a glaze for our salmon that night. I'll put up a picture of that. It was fantastic. It was just, oh, it was just absolutely delicious. Even David enjoyed it. He's not always one for mixing sweet with savory, but it was really a nice addition on top of the salmon. So I'm going to use my little immersion blender, which has gotten a great deal of use this week and will continue to get more. And then I'm going to do my measurements. I want all of my ratios and everything to stay perfect on this. So I will add all my lemon juice I'm supposed to, balsamic vinegar I'm supposed to. As I mentioned, I'll get the ratios right here. So today for lunch, we used the rest of that jar of refrigerator fig jam for a ham sandwich. Again, it was fantastic. It just mixes so well with savory things, meats and cheeses. I just think it's delicious. So anyway, I will try to eat it sparingly as I am keto, you know, but it was delicious. So I'm glad I made it. Okay, on to a recipe I've had several of you folks ask me about. A couple of you have tried. This is the Tikka Masala recipe from Not Your Mama's Canning Book. So of those who have made it, both of you have added additional seasonings, and I agree completely. It needs additional seasonings. So I'm just kind of playing with it here. No additional recipe really to add to this, but I played with it and we really liked it. I mean, we really enjoyed it. So I did end up making it thicker than I probably should have. I should have added some chicken broth or some water just to thin it out a little bit because, as you know, big goopy tomato-based things can often siphon. And I did have one jar that siphoned, and therefore that jar did not seal. But turned out to be, you know, a happy accident because we had it the next night for dinner. And it was really terrific. So this is one that I imagine we'll go through these jars pretty quickly. There are a few other changes I would make, but if this is something you guys would be interested in seeing a video on, and a significant number of you being interested in seeing it, because you know, I know that these international recipes, while they're fun and I love to have them on my shelf, they're not everybody's cup of tea. So they don't necessarily do terribly well, and I don't want to put out content that is not of use to you. So if it's something you want me to flush out as a recipe and do a video on, do let me know down below. So anyway, I'm going to use the immersion blender again. I'm going to use more of those onions and more of the tomatoes and the ginger and the garlic and everything else that I've prepared, and just a ton of seasonings. I mean, really a ton of seasonings, because the original recipe was not, well, it didn't have much of anything in the way of seasonings. So I think everybody who's commented on it to me before is exactly right. So now this one, when I go to serve it, I will add coconut milk to it. You could add yogurt, but I think coconut milk is really traditional with this one. So as I'm working on the seasonings, and I'm like, I don't know, is there too much heat, not enough heat? I wanted to try it with the coconut milk so I can taste it as I'm going to serve it. And wow, that just was that little bit of sweetness, you know, because something in me when I was adding the seasonings, I wanted to add a little bit of sweetness, but you add the coconut milk to that little taste, and that was all the sweetness it needed, and it was really nice. So another thing I'm going to do differently here is blend it up before I put it in the jar. As I mentioned, now she does not, in the cookbook, she does not blend it up. She suggests you blend it up afterward. I don't know, that doesn't really appeal to me. The reason I like to put things on the shelf is because it makes my life easier when it comes time to make dinner. So I don't want the mess of blending it up later. I don't want to take the extra time. So I'm going to blend it up now. And this is where I should have added a little more liquid here, because it does get pretty thick, and that did cause the siphoning. So next time I will do a better job managing the thickness of this thing before I put it in a jar. But boy, was it tasty. And the thickness was actually really quite good when I went to serve it. Here we go. I'm going to put some coconut milk in it now. I ended up eating that entire bowl. It was really good. So the jar that didn't seal, I turned into, obviously, chicken tikka masala, and I served it over coconut rice, and we had a little broccoli with it on the side. It was really good. I had 3 chicken breasts that I defrosted and cut into cubes, and sort of lightly browned those before I added the tikka masala sauce and then the coconut milk. So I figured I would have plenty left over for lunch the next day. Well, David ate not only what I gave him in his initial rather large serving, but he went back and ate the entire other half of the recipe too. So he was pretty pleased with that. In fact, he pretty much liked everything that went on this week, all the little leftovers I had. So the big glaze on the salmon, and then the chicken tikka masala. And you'll see in another recipe coming up, I have a little bit of leftovers there. So he scored this week. So this is the same enchilada sauce that I made, I don't know, a couple of months ago or a month ago, something like that. I have a full video on it, so I'll link it up above. We have really enjoyed having it on the shelf. In fact, it's probably my favorite new addition so far of 2024. So it just makes dinner so easy. The taste is fantastic. And now that I have my new food mill, this is why I actually bought the food mill in the first place. Now that I have the new food mill, it is so much easier than the way I did it before. So you're going to see this goes really quickly. It's going to go in quadruple time for you because I sped it up. But the whole thing went pretty quickly because of that food mill. It just made all the difference in the world. So we're going to use more of those tomatoes, more of the onions, more of the garlic. And this one is worth making. This one is really, if you're looking for something new this year to add to your shelf, this one is really good. So this time I used last time I used a fine mesh sieve to push it through. Not only was it difficult, but it was really, really fine. So this time I used the medium, I don't know what you call it, the medium screen, I guess, on the food mill. And so it was a little bit chunkier, and I wasn't sure I was going to like the texture, but the texture turned out absolutely great when it was in enchiladas. So you could go down to the fine screen, but I thought the medium screen was great. It was kind of that happy medium too, which gave me 8 full jars this time. I think last time I only got 5 or 6 jars, really because I screened out so many of the solids. So this is going to work. This is going to work great. So it makes this recipe so much easier to make. So there are a lot of ingredients, but boy, getting it through the sieve was a workout in and of itself. So now we're good to go. So like last time, I'm also going to freeze dry the leftover solids, and I then grind those up and use them as a seasoning. Well, I will. I have yet to use it as a seasoning, but it smells so good. I'm quite certain that I will use it at some point when I'm not overloaded with all these leftovers in my kitchen. Now this next one is one that I am playing with. It is called Beef Rogan Josh. It is, I think it's traditionally an Indian curry. It's tomato based, and it was originally done with lamb or mutton or goat. I'm using beef, and that's kind of how it has evolved over the years, at least in more American type Indian cuisine or Persian cuisine. So I don't know. I think that this one is going to be terrific. Now, because of course the meat wasn't cooked when it went, or wasn't cooked all the way through when it went into the jars, I haven't tasted it all together as a dish, but I have tasted this sauce, and the sauce is really delicious. So I have about 4.5 pounds of stew beef that I got at Costco that I am going to just brown up and then set it aside. And then again, this is another one of the recipes that is going to use a bunch of those onions and a bunch of those defrosted tomatoes and plenty of the ginger and a bunch of garlic and a lot more seasonings too. So we'll see. I will end up serving this. I'll probably let it sit and melt on the shelf for at least a couple of weeks, and then we'll try it and I'll figure out if there are any additional changes I would like to make. And again, if you would like to see this in a recipe, once I get it exactly the way I want in a full video, just let me know down below. And I used my new jars on this one. So I got these jars from Azure Standard. You may remember that Ball used to make these 24-ounce jars. They no longer make these jars. For a while, they were available by the single jar at, I think it was Hobby Lobby, and they were ridiculously priced, like $2 when they were on sale. So anyway, that one's hard to stomach, but Azure Standard is now making them, and I'm thrilled. So I got my Azure Standard order this I guess the beginning of this week. I guess it was on Monday, and I have been waiting for those jars to do a dish like this where it's not a full meal in a jar where the two of us could eat a quart of something, but it is like the meat and sauce portion of a meal where we really need, for two of us, more than a pint, but we can't eat a whole quart between the two of us. So this is the perfect size for that. So I got these jars, and I think they're beautiful. They have kind of a slight greenish tint to them. I don't know, they're beautiful. They come with, you can either get them without the lids and rings or with the lids and rings. I got them with the lids and rings because I've never tried Superb lids, and I wanted to try them, and that's what they come with. So these bright gold lids, and I don't know. I mean, I think that the lids work well. However, when you go to write on top of the lid what it is that's in there, there's a big old raised Superb right smack dab in the middle of the lid. So you have to kind of fit whatever it is you're writing around that. And that, to me, I don't know, that drives me a little crazy. Plus, I will say these lids are, I guess they're so thick that the ping you're used to with normal lids is more like a firecracker popping next to you. It's a bit unsettling. So anyway, I do love the jars though. I'm not sure that I would, well, I know I won't switch to these lids. I can tell you that right now. It annoys me that they have to put their name in raised letters right where I would like to be writing what's in my jar. So I'm going to add the meat first to make sure I get about the same amount of meat in each jar. And then I will add that sauce and do a really good job debubbling, because it's a thick sauce and it is going into a jar with lots of empty crevices in there from the meat. So I do want to make sure that I do a really good job debubbling. I end up having enough to do 6 jars with the meat, and then I still had extra sauce, so I did an entire jar of just the sauce that I can perhaps use at some point, maybe when we're having another couple over for dinner or something, and I make a chuck roast or something and can do it just kind of on the fly like that. So when I do get to serve this, the traditional Rogan Josh is made with yogurt. Now, I'm not using yogurt because I'm canning this, but you can either add yogurt or you could probably also add coconut milk. But I think the yogurt, the tang from the yogurt will just be fantastic with this. So that's what I'll be doing. At least that's the way I'll do it the first time. And I will probably serve it over cauliflower rice. You could serve it over regular rice. You could serve it with roti. You can serve, whatever it is you want to serve it with. I just think it's going to be great. I know the sauce is fantastic, and I'm sure that the meat will be just as great. So I'm looking forward to this one, and I will let you know how it goes. You can see these jars. Can you see the Superb written right there in the center of the lid where I want to be writing beef Rogan Josh at the date? So 7 of these jars fit in the Presto Electric, just like a wide mouth pint. They're just the same size as a wide mouth pint, just a little bit taller. So 7 of these jars, and because these are larger than pints, they need to be pressure canned for quart size times. So I'm not going to pressure can these for 75 minutes like I would with pints. I'm going to pressure can these for 90 minutes because they're larger than pints. So I'm going for the quart time. All right, now this is a little aside project here. This is to keep the cats and the dog happy. At Costco, I also picked up some chicken tenders, so I'm going to bake those off and then put them in the freeze dryer and store those for the animals. They love to have those as treats, so it's much cheaper than buying already freeze-dried treats for me to go ahead and do this. Okay, so now we're going to come to my little uh-oh moment that I realized as I was looking at the calendar for September. We are going to take a short vacation, 4 or 5 days away, and the very day before we leave, my ButcherBox delivery arrives. And ButcherBox had some fantastic deals this month, so not the least of which was on organic pastured whole chickens. And I bought several of those. So because I won't have time to process them right away, they're going to have to go in the freezer, which means all those tomatoes I have been putting in the freezer to kind of be in their holding pattern until I wanted to make something later this fall, they all now have to come out of the freezer, every single one of them. So I pulled out every single bag of tomatoes that I had put in the freezer already, and I am going to process them into crushed tomatoes, and I end up with, I don't know, I think 15, maybe 15 jars, 16 jars, I don't know, something like that. I have a good batch now of crushed tomatoes, and I'll really kind of earmark these, and at least in my mind, for use in canning projects coming up for the fall, because, you know, my freezer will be bare of frozen tomatoes now. So I was not planning on doing this project, but boy, am I glad I remembered. Boy, it would have been, I don't know, I'd be checking with all my neighbors for freezer space, I guess, if my delivery showed up and I hadn't pre-planned. So anyway, I had to get this done. I'm glad I got it done. So while those are underway, I want to wrap up the fermented hot peppers that we started earlier this month. So I'm turning all of these into hot sauces for David. So I have 2 jars of the Sugar Rush peach peppers that I've been fermenting. And this is one I have made for him before, and he absolutely loved it and requested more. So I am happy to oblige, because my Sugar Rush peach pepper plants are just putting out dozens and dozens and dozens of these things. I have 3 of the plants, and I don't know, they show no signs of stopping. They're completely loaded down with pepper. So you'll end up with plenty of the peach hot sauce. So I also did, I don't remember now if it was last week or the week before, anyway, maybe 10, 14 days ago, I did a red pepper batch and I did a green pepper batch. So I'm going to turn both of those into hot sauces as well. And I'm just going to use the same recipe I used before. So I'm making great progress on filling up that shelf in the refrigerator of all the hot sauces for David. And for me, I just want to see the pretty different colors. You know, the hot sauce is just too hot for me, but I do appreciate the beauty of them. So I will be continuing to do hot sauces and pepper mashes for as long as my peppers are around and producing, which, you know, if history is any reference, it'll be until the first frost. I'll be doing these. So that's terrific. I think I'm going to have a full shelf by the end of the season, and I couldn't be happier about that. So today I have the peachy one, and then I'm going to have a green one and a red one, and I just think they're so fun. I need to figure out a yellow one. I do have the banana peppers. You know, I could do those when they are yellow, I suppose. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do one of those, because heaven knows I have enough banana peppers for 14 families. So we'll see if they make a good hot sauce. Maybe they won't be quite as hot, and I could use a little bit of them. But I'm just using the same recipe on each and every one of these. So as I said, a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of the brine, blend them up, strain them out, and I'm going to keep all those solids and add that to my jar of hot pepper powder that I've been kind of putting together over the summer. And you know, it's really kind of fun. So whenever something calls for cayenne pepper, or I think something needs just a little bit of kick, it's a much more in-depth flavor I'm getting because of all these different peppers than just using cayenne. So I'm enjoying that, and we'll keep doing it. These could also be the little pulp from the pepper. It could also be dehydrated. It, you know, doesn't need to be freeze-dried, of course, but that's what I'm doing because I've got it. Next up, the beef Rogan Josh is coming out of the canner. Everything looks great. It was not too thick. Everything sealed just absolutely fine. And as I mentioned, I do have one full jar, that one with the silver lid on it, that I will find another way to use. So now on to the rest of, well, not the rest of, but another batch of potatoes. Again, I've been waiting on these 24-ounce jars to do another batch of kind of diced potatoes that, I don't know, I kind of call these like dinner potatoes. So they could go into a pan with herbs and butter, or I could fry them up, or I can throw them in a stew or something like that. So that's how I kind of use these. So I'm going to get 7 of these 24-ounce jars out of this. Again, I'm using Diane's method that I used last week on the fries. I will tell you that in the past week I have noticed significantly more discoloration than the method I've used for years that involves citric acid. But that may not matter at all if you're going to throw them in the oven and brown them up anyway. So I don't know, we'll see. The jury's still out on that one. I will let you know kind of as time goes on how they fare. The other thing I will say is that I think that I prefer them a little less cooked. I don't know. I mean, cooked is cooked, right? But she processes hers for a little bit longer, and I kind of prefer my lesser processing time. So again, I have not tried these yet, so I'm really reserving judgment. And I am doing all of my potatoes this way this year, so that I do have enough enough quantity that I can really kind of judge it over time. So it is super quick and easy. I will say it takes much less time than my usual method. It is a rebel canning method, so it is not for everybody. I will link her recipe down below if you want to go check it out. You know, do consider for yourself. It is, you know, if it's something that you feel comfortable doing. It is something I feel comfortable doing. I'm really doing this to see if citric acid is necessary, because I have always used citric acid in mine. But these do not call for it. So we'll see. So I'm going to fill up 7 jars of these. You can see that kind of slight green tint here in the picture. The old ball jars did not have the green tint to them. So it'll be kind of fun to see these filled with potatoes next to my old ball jars filled with potatoes, to see if you can still see the tint. I told you week 5 was busy, right? All right, let's go through what we got done. I'm going to do a quick run through. I will do my best to break it out week by week down below in the description, so that if you want to see how to make roasted tomatoes, onions, and garlic, or hot pickled peppers or something, you can pick the week. Hopefully I'll get everything in there and go back and take a look to see how we did it. Okay, beef Rogan Josh that we just did in week 5. Peach sauce, you know, I'm making that for one of my Christmas gifts this year. I have refrigerator banana peppers. I have fig jam, a ton of fig jam. I'll be using that as hostess gifts, party gifts. I have one girlfriend who really likes fig jam, so I made some extra for her. Roasted tomatoes, garlics, and onions. This is one of my most used tomato products in the pantry. Most used products completely in the pantry. I have peach preserves. I have hot pickled peppers, tikka masala, peach BBQ sauce, cherry sauce, which is another part of my Christmas gift, enchilada sauce, which is probably my favorite new addition in 2024 to my pantry. This is my second batch I've made this year, and there might actually be a third because we really, really enjoy this. So if you haven't seen that video, I do have a full tutorial on making the enchilada sauce, so I'll link that as well. Sweet Italian sausage, another one of my most used staples in my pantry, so I got another stock up on that. We did peach jam. I did a whole bunch of crushed tomatoes. This is how I am storing my not yet used in a recipe tomatoes. So normally I would do that in the freezer, but as I told you, my freezer there's too much of a demand for freezer space right now. So I have taken them all out of the freezer. I have canned them as crushed tomatoes, and they are ready for me to use in whatever recipe I want to use, canning recipe, regular dinner recipe, whatever I need. I have done potatoes, so I have done chunks of potatoes. I've done more French fries. I have done fermented pickles over here. I've done lots of dried herbs. I have some garlic powder. I have an herbed sea salt. I have a hot pepper powder, really. I have my garlic and elephant garlic that I processed and put in the refrigerator so that it can start getting its chill hours. This will be my seed garlic for this year. It'll go in the ground in October. I made some cat and dog treats out of some chicken breast tenders. Up here, I made a ton of jalapeno poppers. This is really for football season to keep my husband fed while he's watching, so I'm not running around trying to do the short order cook thing. Pull these out of the freezer, pop them in the oven, and it takes 16 to 18 minutes, and he's a happy guy. I have done a bunch of ferments down here. These are fermented hot sauces. So this was made with my red and orange hot peppers, green hot peppers, sugar rush peach hot peppers, and then I have a couple of pepper mashes. These are both fermented, and those were made with the red and orange peppers as well. I have some oven-dried tomatoes that I've frozen in kind of meal-ready packs, and then I have a bunch of peppers and onions, again, that I have done as meal prep. And so each package is about what I would use in any given meal that I'm making. And finally, I have some frozen garlic ice cubes, I guess, if you will. So I ground up the garlic with just a tiny bit of olive oil, froze it into ice cubes, and then as I need them, I pop them out and throw them in a recipe. So that is what we get done in 1 month, and you can do it too. And in fact, I know many of you probably have done this and much more. I know some of you are real powerhouses in terms of preservation. So I can't wait to hear what you have done. I appreciate you so much for being here. If you are not yet subscribed, I ask you, please subscribe, and we'll do, this is what I do. So we'll do more of this. We'll do some gardening. We're gonna have a great fall. I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate you very much. Enjoy. Bye-bye.